Welcome to Your Healthy Kitchen from YRMC.
Welcome to Your Healthy Kitchen. I'm your host, Rita Rubin. I imagine there is as many salsa recipes out there as there are cooks, especially here in the Southwest. After all, salsa is sauce, and it can be made with an endless variety of fresh and seasonal vegetables, fruits, and herbs. And salsa can really power up your plate with flavor as well as nutrients. The main ingredients in most salsas, onions, garlic, and chilies, are packed with valuable phytonutrients, including allicin in garlic, quercetin in onions, and capsaicin in chilies. And all of those nutrients have antioxidant, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory qualities, which help to protect us from acute and chronic diseases, including cancer, cardiovascular disease, and possibly even the common cold. And no salsa is complete without fresh herbs like cilantro, parsley, basil, or even chives. And herbs are also packed with antioxidant, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory chemicals, as well as important nutrients like calcium and iron and vitamin C and even some B vitamins. So salsa is essential to a good taco, enchilada, or bowl of chips, but the bright flavors in salsa also pair perfectly well with grilled, roasted, or stuffed vegetables, mild flavored foods like eggs and omelets, or even bowls of beans, and simply prepared seafood, poultry, or meat. So I brought ingredients to make two of my favorite salsas today. A charred or roasted tomato salsa, made with the usual suspects of tomatoes, onions, chilies, and garlic, and a type of salsa verde, which hails from Italy and is bright with the flavors of parsley, lemon, garlic, and other green herbs. So we'll start with a roasted tomato salsa. This is really one of my favorite salsas to make in the summer when tomatoes are ripe and fresh, and super easy to make. And really, really rich flavors are due to charring the vegetables. And there's a couple of ways you can char the vegetables. One is in the oven, which is what we're going to do today, under a broiler. Or you can also pile the vegetables on a grill pan and grill them until they've got some nice blackened edges. So, simple recipe. We start with some onions. And if your onions are small like this, I just want to cut them into quarters. So I'll cut it in half first and then peel the outer skin and cut them into quarters. If you have a bigger onion, you might want to cut the onion into eighths and just use one. So I'll pile all these onto just a plain old baking sheet, and then some tomatoes. So I use usually 4 or 5 tomatoes, medium size, and cut those into quarters as well. If you have larger tomatoes, you can cut them into eighths, or smaller tomatoes, cut them in half. You want the tomatoes and the onions to be about the same size. So I've got my tomatoes. And then I add lots of garlic, usually 8 or more cloves, just whole cloves that have just been peeled. Throw that on there with the tomatoes and the onions. And then the essential ingredient, chilies. So the chilies, the type that you use, the amount, that's such a personal preference. Obviously, the more chilies you add, the spicier it'll be. So these are just some jalapenos, and I have to admit, my tolerance for chilies is not great. I've lived here for over 20 years, and I've tried to eat things more. I've had to try to adjust my palate so I can eat things that are more spicy, but I haven't been able to do it. So for my salsa, I just add one jalapeno, a whole jalapeno. You can take the seeds out of the chili if you want to by just slicing it in half and scooping out the seeds. That'll probably make your salsa a little more mild. But watch the chili, because when we put this under the broiler or on the grill, the chilies tend to cook more quickly than the other vegetables, so they'll burn. So you might check the cooking process about halfway through, and you might have to pull your chili out a little early. So all your veggies on a baking pan, Just toss it with a little olive oil and a good pinch of salt. And then just toss the veggies around so they're coated pretty well. And because I'm broiling them, I will put the skins of the tomatoes face up because the heat's coming from the top of the oven, and that will char the skins pretty nicely. And I'm going to tuck that chili in the middle and the garlic too, to protect them a little bit because they do cook faster than the chilies and the onions. And then stick it under a broiler for 10-15 minutes. And check them about halfway through just to see how things are going. And when you pull them out, they look like this. And you want them to be slightly charred. You can cook them a little bit more than this if you want to, but you don't want to, blacken everything. You don't want to obliterate everything and burn everything. You just want a little bit of char for that flavor. So I'll take these lovely veggies, and I want to save all of that yummy sauce that's in the baking sheet. So just scrape these guys into a bowl. Make sure you get all of those charred bits of veggies and all that nice juice. And put that in your bowl. And then pour it in a food processor. And we'll just blend all these guys up into kind of a chunky puree. So this takes a couple seconds here. You could chop all these guys up too if you want a chunkier salsa. And then I throw in some cilantro, half a cup or so, a little less, a little more, depending on your taste. And maybe another tablespoon of olive oil. The little bit of oil really helps to bring the flavor out in all those vegetables. Binds everything together. And I'll put a pinch of salt. And puree this guy up. That's all there is to it. And then I finish it off with some fresh lime juice and a little lime zest. Zest is that lovely outer edge of limes and lemons and oranges that gives this really bright, intense citrus flavor to whatever you're making. So there's your salsa. Isn't that pretty? And I've got a little bit of lime, and this, adjust this to your taste depending on how much citrus you like. But usually it's about a half a lime that I use. And then a little zest, which again is just that pretty outer edge of the citrus fruit. And this really picks up the flavor quite a bit. That's all there is to it. Kind of a one-pot salsa. So it's lovely on any of the typical foods that you put salsa on, or again, roasted vegetables, grilled meats or fish or chicken. It's really good on grilled tofu too. So the second salsa that I wanted to share with you is one that's called Salsa Verde. And like I said earlier, this one hails from Italy, and the main herb in Salsa Verde is actually parsley. And it's a wonderful salsa to make, especially if you buy a bunch of parsley and you just use a few leaves and then you're left with this big bunch of parsley and you don't know what to do with it. Make a Salsa Verde. So usually all Salsa Verdes have parsley in them. And there's a ton of recipes out there. So You'll see lots of variations, but the main ingredients are usually parsley, sometimes basil, and for our salsa today I'm going to use basil and a little mint as well. So always parsley, sometimes with basil or other herbs. And then there are always capers, and capers are little pickled flower buds, and they're really neat. They come from a shrub that grows in really arid areas, and they're picked by hand. So sometimes they're a little costly, but in recipes you only use a few capers usually in a recipe. So it's kind of worth buying a jar of capers to have on hand. And some recipes also use something called cornichons, which are little tart French pickles. The other common ingredient is olive oil, a little salt and pepper, and some garlic. So for our salsa today, we'll start with a clove of garlic. And what I'll do is I'll turn this clove into a paste, which really brings the flavor of the garlic out. And you can also use a garlic press if you'd like, if you just want to press the garlic, which is certainly quicker. Or you can chop it up with a little bit of salt. The salt actually helps you to break up the garlic and turn the garlic into a paste. So you just take your garlic clove and chop it up as small as you can. And then take the side of your knife and give it some pressure and just start dragging your knife across the garlic. And it'll start to break it down, and like I said, just turn it into a paste. And when you use garlic in your food, when you chop it up, and especially when you chop it up finely like this, it makes the garlic much more nutritious. The active ingredient, allicin, in garlic becomes really healthy and good for you when is exposed to air. So using a garlic press or chopping your garlic up fine will make that really healthy chemical more available to you. So we've got our garlic. And then for the herbs, just take the parsley. So there's about 2 cups of parsley. And about 1 cup of basil. The parsley, use the leaves and just a little bit of the stem. You don't want big old heavy stems in your salsa. And the basil, just the leaves, not much of the stem. So again, this is about 1 ounce of basil, or about 1 cup. That's kind of moderately packed. And some mint. There's about 1/4 cup of fresh mint leaves that I pulled out of my garden this morning. Just make this nice pile of green. And then I throw on my capers, a couple tablespoons of capers. And I'm going to throw a couple of these cornichons in there too. If you don't have these, they're not very common in local grocery stores. But if you have them, throw a couple in there. They add a nice little tartness to the sauce. And we're going to chop all this up together. But before I start chopping, I will toss the herbs with just a little bit of olive oil. And this will help prevent the basil from turning dark. If you chop basil and it's exposed to air for much time, it will start to turn black. So a little bit of olive oil that you toss in with the herbs will help to prevent that. So then you just take your knife and you dig in to this big pile of green. Now you can also throw all of this stuff in a food processor. It's very, very quick and easy. But the texture is not quite the same. I actually like to chop it by hand because the salsa is really it's meant to be kind of rough, and the texture is a little bit coarse and not totally smooth like our charred tomato salsa. With your Salsa Verde, you want it to be kind of rustic. So I'm just chopping through this pile here. And you know, there's so much talk about, you know, getting superfoods in our diet. You know, it could be, you know, eat more kale, or years ago, wheat germ, maybe acai berries or cocoa. You know, you hear about all these foods that are superfoods, meaning that they're packed with nutrients and are super important for protecting you from disease and keeping you healthy. But you know, the most common and least expensive superfoods are the guys right here. They're herbs. They're packed with nutrients. If you just look at basil that I have on my cutting board here. Basil has really important antibacterial properties. The essential oils in basil can actually fight bacteria like staph. Basil is also anti-inflammatory, and the chemicals in basil act the same way as the chemicals in anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin or ibuprofen. And parsley, also antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's wonderful for digestion, good breath. And parsley actually helps to activate a really important antioxidant in your body called glutathione. And then mint. Mint is great also for digestion, good for your breath after you eat all the garlic that's in the salsa. Also anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. So think of herbs as superfoods. So there's my lovely pile of green. And what you do is you take your garlic, that nice garlic paste, which has been sitting in the air for a little while now. And it's been activating that allicin. And we'll put all of these, isn't that pretty? If you could smell this, you would be drooling. It just smells fantastic. So we put all of this in a bowl. And it's kind of messy, as most good cooking is. So we've got our herbs, and now what I'll do is add olive oil and lemon juice, and then taste the flavor and see if it might need a little extra salt. It probably doesn't, because we've got two very salty ingredients here, the capers and the cornichons. So I've got some olive oil, and you know, the amount of olive oil you add depends on what you're looking for your salsa. You can make it kind of a loose salsa by adding more olive oil, or if you want it to be a little chunky, add a little less. But most of all, adjust the amount of olive oil for your taste, because the olive oil adds a lovely richness and flavor. So we've got olive oil. I'll take some lemon juice, just a little fresh lemon. I start with about half of a lemon, and again, adjust the amount for my taste. And the Salsa Verde is supposed to have a real brightness to it. So whether you use lemon juice or vinegar, it should taste very bright and tart. So that's that. And I like to add just a little bit of pepper too. So a little bit of ground pepper. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And again, adjust the flavors, adding a little more, a little less garlic or salt or lemon, depending on what your tastes are. Isn't that beautiful? So remember, if you want to power up your plate with protective disease-fighting nutrients, fill your meals with flavor. The big, bold flavors of onions, garlics, chilies, and herbs are big and bold because of the important nutrients they contain. Onions that deliver some heat and a little bite are more nutritious than those that are sweet. And garlic that's fresh and pungent is better for you than the garlic that's sold in a jar. And all herbs are superfoods. Their bright flavors are due to the valuable phytonutrients packed into every leaf. So learn more about cooking simple, fresh, and delicious meals. Check out all of our videos and recipes at yrmchealthconnect.org. Just scroll down the page and click on the link to Your Healthy Kitchen. And you can also follow us on Facebook at YRMC's Your Healthy Kitchen. Check in to see what I'm making in my kitchen at home, get insider tips and recipes, and find great links to interesting news, websites, and videos about healthy food, cooking, and even gardening. After all, fresh herbs, garlic, chilies, or tomatoes grown in your backyard or even in a sunny window offer up more fresh flavor and nutrients than those you find in any market. So plant some herbs and vegetables, make some salsa, serve it on something other than a chip. Say hello on Facebook, and we'll see you soon.